Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Power Rankings for Week 3 of the NFL season. Week 2 is wrapped up, and it was a pretty entertaining week of football. Quite a few upsets, a few teams stepping back onto the scene as the dominant forces we know them to be. With all that being said, before we dive right into it, I want to quickly say if you are new, subscribe, it'd be greatly appreciated. Leave a like and comment down below your thoughts and your opinions. And now let's get right into it. The first honorable mention will be the Dallas Cowboys. That game was a shootout that I did not see coming. And though the Dallas did get the win, they aren't moving a lot in power rankings. They're still staying in this third honorable mention spot that it would have been last week if I included three honorable mentions. Because even with that win and the offense playing really great and Brandon Aubrey being a great force at kicker for the Cowboys, the defense got completely exposed by Russell Wilson throughout the entire game. And yes, they made that big time play late in overtime that set up the Brandon Aubrey game winning field goal, but they gave up 37 to a team that only put up 6 the week prior. It was not a great showing, was not a good look. Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson each had 140 plus yards against this Cowboys secondary. And everyone knew the defense was going to be a weak point for this Cowboys team this year, especially after trading Micah Parsons. And it really showcased in this game. And because of it, I'm keeping them in the honorable mentions category. Another honorable mention is the San Francisco 49ers. And I was tempted to put the Niners inside the top 10, probably at the number 10 spot, but I'm shying against it, in part still due to the injuries that they are facing as a team. They did play well against the Saints, a game that was relatively close. It was a 5-point game. And the defense, they held Rattler to 207 yards through the air, but they gave up 3 touchdowns. Run defense, they played pretty fine, but Kamara had 99 yards on the day, but it did force a fumble. Mac Jones, he surprised me with his play. He played fantastic in this game, did a great job leading that offense, but it was against the Saints defense and the Saints team that's not really great this season, and everyone knows they're not going to be great. So at the same time, he played well. I need to see it against a better opponent and against a better defense before I can really put a lot of stake into what we're seeing from Mac Jones. Christian McCaffrey played fine. The receiver room was also solid, but the injuries and just the tiers of opponents that they've played, and especially in this game, keeping me from putting them inside that top 10, but they are very close. The final honorable mention is the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is just simply not the same Chiefs team we have seen in years prior, and I think that is fine. Listen, it was inevitable for a team that's had this much sustained success to eventually have a down year, and in this case, what very easily could be a gap year for the Chiefs. So that's what this year seems to be. It is unlikely, but there's still technically a chance for them to have go on a run and make the playoffs. And this is a Chiefs team that definitely can do that just based off of pedigree alone, but the offense is not looking right. Mahomes is missing guys he typically hits. He has like over 200 yards of missed passes already through 2 weeks of the season. It is tough out there for him, and it's very uncharacteristic. But what isn't, from what we saw last year, is some of these dropped passes. They're continuing to rear their ugly head, and in this game, the game losing play, Kelsey dropped a pass that ended up being picked off, and that caused a 14-point swing in the game, and that effectively lost the Chiefs this game. So anyway, everyone's saying, "Oh, the tush push, the tush push, the tush push." That play right there, Kelsey dropping that pass, is what lost them this game. No doubt in my mind about that. But the defense is continuing to play well. They held this Eagles offense to only 20 points. The pass game was non-existent for the Eagles today. The run game was pretty okay. So it was a defensive performance that should have resulted in a win. This offense is the issue, though. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, but their upcoming schedule is not easy by any means. So, with that, they fall to the honorable mentions for the first time of me doing these power rankings. To kick things off, number 10 is the Indianapolis Colts. And the Colts have been off to a hotter start than even I expected for this season, especially being led by Daniel Jones, but it is working out for them so far. Jones threw for 316 yards and a touchdown in this one. Jonathan Taylor had an incredible game, 165 yards. He basically single-handedly had all of the Colts rushing yards in this game. They have yet to punt this season, making them the first team in the Super Bowl era for that to be the case for, which is a very impressive stat. Tyler Warren continues to play well, being one of the main receiver options for Daniel Jones. And the defense is also playing well. They held Bo Nix to just over 200 yards in this one, though they did give up 3 touchdowns. J.K. Dobbins also had a solid game, 76 yards and a touchdown. But for the most part, this defense is playing well. And yes, they did kind of get saved on a weird leverage call in this game. But at the same time, you can only do so much about that. Who really cares? He still had to make the kick again either way. And I know he didn't miss it the first time, but still. I second guess putting the Colts on this because of how the Saints started their season last year, with them being an incredibly hot team to begin the year and then instantly flaming out. I'm kind of concerned that this is a similar situation, and it does feel like it's something that could be a similar situation. So that's why they're at 10 and not any higher. Number 9 is the Washington Commanders. And it was a tough loss for sure for this Commanders team. This was a game that they definitely had a chance to win, but the offense left me with quite a few questions throughout the game. And even as I'm recording Power Rankings, the biggest is how they're utilizing Jayden Daniels' mobility. He had 7 carries in this game. Not a lot of them were through design QB keepers. And the reason that puzzles me is because they lined up in 5 wide a lot in this game, especially in the second half. And to me, this Commanders team is not a team built around a 5 wide passing game, but it can be built around a 5 wide mix between QB keepers and the pass. But they didn't really mix them around that much. And that definitely caused the offense to not be a consistent unit, especially in that second half when they couldn't execute the 5 wide consistent enough. The defense, they mainly struggled against Tucker Kraft, but for the most part, the defense gave them the opportunities to get back into this game. They just wasted the opportunities with it, in part because their kicker missed 2 kicks, but that's besides the point. The biggest thing is they only had 3 points entering the fourth quarter when they then scored 15. The offense was the biggest rough point in this one. I do think part of it is just the Packers are that good of a team, especially defensively, but the play calling situations throughout that game definitely did not help either. The Commanders come in at number 9. The Los Angeles Rams are at number 8, and there is that offense that I know the Rams have the ability to possess. Better showing this week, Stafford looked really solid, nearly 300 yards on the day and 2 touchdowns. Devontae Adams got more involved with over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. Puka Nacua also played well, 91 yards through the air, and had a 45-yard touchdown run. Kyren Williams, he played fine at just about 4 yards per carry. That's the number you want to hit, in my opinion. And the ground game as a whole played well with having 150 yards on the day. So the offense, massive step forward from the game against Houston the week prior. The defense continued to play well. They made it a tough game for the Titans. They sacked Cam Ward 5 times, held him to under 200 yards through the air, and the Rams pretty much dominated this game on the road in the cross-country trip. This was the performance I was kind of waiting for the Rams to have. Kind of thought they were going to have a little bit more of this, maybe some signs of this more so against Houston, but it ends up showing up here against Tennessee, and I am fine with that. I do really like the Rams this season. I think they could compete in this NFC, and this was a showing that gave me more confidence in that, so they come in at number 8. Number 7 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that game came down to the wire, but the Buccaneers now have had 5 straight seasons where they began 2-0, and that is a very impressive stat to possess. The first quarter was great for the offense. Baker Mayfield played well. Mike Evans, Emeka Egbuka, and Cade Otton all got involved in that early action. Meanwhile, the defense played really well. They made things tough for CJ Stroud, especially in the second and third quarters of this game. And even when the offense started to struggle at points in this one, they were still moving the ball in a way that I can be fine with, as they were mainly wasting clock and getting the ground game working, which worked really well. Bucky Irvin and Rashard White combined to have 136 yards on the day, proving that they are one of the better running back tandems in the league. And even Baker Mayfield got involved on the ground. He had 33 yards and a very key scramble on the 4th and 10 in the final drive of the game. That kept that game-winning drive alive. It allowed them to be able to win that game. Baker Mayfield is a fantastic quarterback. He fits this Tampa team so well. And I absolutely love how gritty and how tough this Tampa team plays. I love the way that Baker Mayfield makes plays for them. And as a whole, this Tampa team something special there with that tandem that they have and with that team that they have and that core that they have. I really like what we saw. They come in at number 7. Number 6 is the Los Angeles Chargers, and that was a nice win for the Chargers as they now hold sole possession of first place in the AFC West with that win. And from the jump, the game was going their way. They picked off Geno Smith on the very first play of the game. The offense, it had its moments, but for the most part, I feel it played fine and just got the job done. Herbert had 242 yards on the day alongside 2 touchdowns, and that was the driving force of the offense as the ground game struggled. Herbert led the way with 31 yards, followed by Najee Harris with 28, and then Omarion Hampton with 24. The defense, though, continued the great play, holding the Raiders' ground game to 68 yards and 3.6 yards per carry, and Geno Smith to 180 yards, picking him off 3 times, including Tony Jefferson getting a pick in this game. His first time since 2018 with an interception, as he spent the past few years as a scout. So really massive props and massive shout out to Tony Jefferson for getting involved in this game. And it was just another nice divisional win for the Chargers. They have kind of surprised me early on in this season, getting those 2 wins, more so the win against the Chiefs last week. But this is a Chargers team that had a good season last year, and they're continuing that into this season and just finding ways to win games. They're playing well. It is still early on, definitely, so things could change, but for the time being, they come in at number 6. Number 5 is the Green Bay Packers, and I know they won. I know for the most part they dominated this game. The defense played really well, giving up 200 yards through the air, only 51 yards on the ground given up, with all 3 of the rushers for the Commanders being held to 17 yards. They sacked Jaden Daniels 4 times. They made things rough for them on 3rd down. My main concern, though, is with the offense, and especially because Jaden Reed broke his collarbone in this game, and that is a tough loss for that receiver room. Although it is a deep receiver room, Jaden Reed is a big part of it, and him being out for the foreseeable future is not a good sign there. Josh Jacobs also just had a fine game. He's kind of been sluggish a little bit to truly break out and find his footing this season. 3.7 yards per carry and a touchdown. Again, it's a solid game, but for Josh Jacobs' caliber, you're expecting a little bit more on a consistent basis. It is still very early on in the season. That's why I am still not putting too much against it. Jordan Love played fine as well, 292 yards and 2 touchdowns. The majority of these yards were to Tucker Kraft, who had a dominant game in this one. He played really well. But just like with week 1, it didn't feel like the offense was fully clicking at times. It was still a really good showing, but just one where you feel like if it's against a different team, maybe it would not have gone the same way. And there's going to be time to iron out these wrinkles and these complaints I'm having with it. It's all pretty much just nitpicks. But this is a Packers team that a lot of people are seeing as a Super Bowl contender, and these are the nitpicks that are going to end up. They're going to make it so that way they don't end up in the Super Bowl. So they're coming at number 5. Number 4 is the Detroit Lions, and that is how you bounce back after a tough road loss to begin the season. Their home opener, they dominated this game. They looked dominant on offense, especially. Back to the last year form, Jared Goff had 5 incompletions to go with 334 yards and 5 touchdowns through the air. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery had 151 yards and 2 touchdowns on 23 combined carries. Dominated on the ground once again. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams both had over 100 yards, with Amon-Ra having 3 touchdowns on the day. This was the last year's Lions offense that we were accustomed to. They didn't show up in week 1. They showed up here in week 2, and that was a great thing to see on Sunday. The defense played well. Nothing special, nothing fantastical, but it was a really solid defensive showing. Caleb Williams had just over 200 yards. In this one, a majority of it went to Rome Odunze, about 64% of those yards. The ground defense for the Lions, not the greatest. It gave up 134 yards on the ground, but the defense did force 2 turnovers, and all around making it a pretty solid game. I loved seeing the offense being back in action like that. The defense still played solid. Want to see a little bit more if you're going to be a top team, but the offense masks some of that for the time being. And I do trust Dan Campbell to get that defense into a better shape. And I'm saying all of that like they didn't only give up 21 points in this game. Again, the defensive showing that a lot of teams would take. The Lions certainly would. They come in at number 4. Number 3 is the Baltimore Ravens. And that was a good bounce back win for the Ravens against the Cleveland Browns, a game that they thoroughly dominated from the get-go of it. The offense, a great show. Lamar Jackson had 225 yards and 4 touchdowns through the air. The ground game didn't get utilized in the same way it did against Buffalo. Derrick Henry only had 11 carries for 23 yards, but I'm not too worried about that because of what we saw against Buffalo for that ground game. And as a whole, this offense is going to be a very tough one to stop this season. The question is just come the playoffs, can they continue what they have shown during the regular season? And through 2 weeks, that is an offense that could beat you in multiple ways. The defense played much better than they did against Buffalo, but at the same time, it was against a Browns offense that struggled against Cincy's defense. So it's hard to tell if it's because the Ravens defense has actually improved that much week in, week out, or it's just a result of the opponent they're going against. We'll see as the weeks progress. But I do have faith in this Ravens defense to get back onto the right foot and have more games like we saw this week than what we saw against Buffalo in week 1. Part of it is also because Buffalo's offense is one of the best offenses. But as a whole, the Ravens come in at number 3. Number 2 is the Buffalo Bills, and the offense did not miss a beat in this one. Similar to the Ravens, they beat the Jets in a different way than what they beat the Ravens in week 1. And it was a fantastic showing. Though Josh Allen had less yards, he still played well, going 14 for 25 in this game, about 6 yards per attempt he had. The real highlight, though, is the massive improvement that the ground game took this week. James Cook went off, 132 yards and 2 touchdowns on 21 carries. He had a fantastic game. Josh Allen, he ran well, 60 yards on 6 carries. And this is a ground game that I was waiting to show up, and they did it early on in the season. That is a great sign. The defense also took a massive step forward. They went from giving up 40 points to the Ravens to only 10 points against the Jets. And I'm mentioning that because this is a Jets team that put up 32 against the Steelers last week. So it is a good showing for this Bills defense. They gave up 83 yards through the air, 3 yards per carry to Breece Hall in this game. And they had 17 more minutes of time of possession, nearly 350 more yards on the day. The Bills dominated this game. They have a short week playing Thursday night. Going to be an interesting one to watch, a game that they should also dominate as they come in at number 2 on these rankings. Rounding things out at number 1 is the Philadelphia Eagles. And it was a different performance from what we saw back in February at the Super Bowl. But just like the Super Bowl, the Eagles got away with the win. The defense seemingly has Mahomes' number. At this point, the Chiefs' offense looked rough once again. It was a nice bend, don't break style from this Eagles defense. They did not give up anything easy. They held Mahomes to 187 yards, even picking him off once. They held the tandem of Pacheco and Kareem Hunt to 53 yards on 18 carries. All around, this was a really, really good defensive performance from this Eagles team that had some questions about their defense entering this season. They continued to show that they have a defense that can play. The offense did enough. It wasn't anything flashy. It showed that they can beat you in multiple different styles with this game. Jalen Hurts only had about 100 yards through the air. Saquon Barkley averaged 4 yards per carry with 88 yards on 22 carries. And all around, this was a good win for the Eagles. It wasn't a high-powered offense that we're used to seeing. It was a bone-crushing defense that got them the win. And when you're able to win in multiple ways, like the Eagles have shown already this season, you're going to be one of the better teams in the league. And just like that, they come in at number 1. Okay, so there you have it. Quick little rundown. The Colts are at 10, Commanders at 9, Rams at 8, Buccaneers at 7, Chargers at 6, the Packers are at 5, Lions at 4, Ravens at 3, Bills are at 2, and the Philadelphia Eagles round things out at number 1. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you all next time. Have yourselves a damn good one. Peace.